You're listening to The World at 8 with Lynne Mozart. The World at 8, the number one in nationalist news.
Highlights of the news today, Wednesday 25th of June 2014. Jihadi threat to blow up oil tanker at major UK port. EastEnders too white, warns BBC Trust boss. There are too many ethnics on TV, says Asian BBC chief. Le Pen fails to secure anti-immigrant, anti-Euro MEP bloc. Spain, famous Barcelona bullring may be converted into Europe's biggest mosque. Denmark is one of the most Islamic countries in the world, but New Zealand ranks higher. Iraq, mother and daughter raped by ISIS militants for not paying jizya tax. Syria, 12,000 fighters from 81 countries in civil war. And Australia offers asylum seekers $10,000 to return home. Thought for the day, some problems are not meant to be solved. And finally, 2 for 1 day Wednesday, you lucky people. UK news. Jihadi threat to blow up oil tanker at major UK port. Sunday's Daily Star exclusively reported more than 40 personnel from the Special Boat Services Maritime Countermeasures Unit have been deployed to ports across the UK, working with police to review security and mount surveillance operations on hundreds of arrivals and departures. The SBS team is being supported by specialists from the Special Reconnaissance Regiment to monitor maritime movements across the UK around the clock. EastEnders too white, warns BBC Trust boss. EastEnders is twice as white as the real East End, according to the head of the BBC Trust, who has called for the corporation to do more to provide an authentic portrayal of modern Britain. Acting head of the BBC Trust, Diane Coyle, said the popular BBC One soap is also too young and has too many people born in the UK to be an accurate reflection of an area such as Walthamstow, one of the boroughs on which the fictional Albert Square is based. In her first public speech since taking over as chair of the BBC's governing body, Miss Coyle, who is in the running to replace Lord Patten as head of the Trust, said the programme did not provide an accurate picture of modern-day Britain. World at 8. She should talk again and croak. If EastEnders is not representative of our capital today, she's right as far as ethnics go, but as far as homosexuals, lesbians and oddities go, all okay there. When is it going to enter the heads of these retards that, apart from the younger generations who think we are all multi-ethnic anyway, there is a large proportion of us who pay our licence fees who don't want to look at black or Asian faces all the time, mainly because they're around us in real life all the time. Escapism is a great view. There are too many ethnics on TV, says Asian BBC chief. A senior Asian figure at the BBC claimed there are too many ethnic minority faces on TV. Dr Samir Shah, a non-executive director, accused the corporation and others of rampant tokenism in their programming. He claimed a tick box approach to showing non-whites had left minority viewers feeling embarrassed and irritated. The former head of current affairs at BBC said the politically correct antics of broadcasters were creating an inauthentic representation of who we are. World at 8. He is right insofar as there are too many. I counted the other day and 90% at that time on the news and weather were ethnics or part ethnics. As to embarrassing minority viewers, I would presume he means us. Could be paying for Indian or Arabic or African TV in reality. European news. Le Pen fails to secure anti-immigrant, anti-Euro MEP bloc. National Front leader Marine Le Pen has failed to build an anti-Euro, anti-immigrant voting bloc within the European Parliament, the French far-right party said in a statement Tuesday. Had she cobbled together a minimum of 25 MEPs drawn from 7 EU nations by June the 23rd, EP rules would have granted the bloc millions in extra party funding and the power to propose legislative amendments. Le Pen, whose party won big in March local elections and garnered 23 MEPs in May voting, had the support of Dutch politician Geert Wilder's Freedom Party, 4 MEPs, the Northern League of Italy 5 MEPs including Party Secretary Matteo Salvini, Heinz Christian Strache's Freedom Party of Austria 5 MEPs and Flemish Nationalist Party Vlaams Belang from Belgium. When the inaugural session of Parliament kicks off on July the 1st, those MEPs will begin their term relegated to a second-class tier that also includes Greek Golden Dawn Party, Germany's far-right National Democratic Party and Hungary's Jobbik Party. Excluded from proportionally assigned posts and dossiers, they will be granted very limited speaking time and will need 40 signatures just to submit an amendment. Wilders has already announced that the alliance may become a reality later this year. World at 8. What part about leaving the EU has not reached them? Mind you, the money is good, so time will tell. Unification is what is needed. Nationalists need to think like communists, hive mentality and forget the small concerns and personalities. Spain, famous Barcelona bullring may be converted into Europe's biggest mosque. The Emir of Qatar has reportedly agreed to roll out €2.2 billion to convert Barcelona's monumental bullring into a 40,000 capacity mosque, the biggest in Europe by 2020 if the city council approves the project. The building would include a 300-metre high minaret which may become the third largest in the world after those in Mecca and Medina, reports 20 Minutos, Spain's most read general newspaper, citing its sources close to the project. The mosque for Barcelona's Muslims will also have a conference hall, a Quran study centre, housing up to 300 people and a museum of Islamic art and history. World at 8. Whilst I condemn bullfights, couldn't this arena become something more Christian and Spanish? Theatre, music hall or indeed Catholic church? Roll out the Pope's lolly mates. Will the Spanish allow this when they're driving out the English? Denmark is one of the most Islamic countries in the world, but New Zealand ranks higher. A new study by 2 George Washington University academics ranked 208 countries on what they have coined the Islamicity Index. The ranking is based on how closely a country is aligned with Islamic teachings from the Quran and the life sayings of the Prophet, according to the study. The Islamicity of a country is based on many factors: rule of law, human and civil rights, natural resource management, income distribution and eradication of poverty, amongst others. Out of the 12 countries that have declared Islam as their state religion, the highest ranked is Malaysia, 38. Scandinavian countries, Denmark and Norway, 12, rank quite high, while Islamic countries such as Qatar, 112, Libya, 196 and Iraq, 201, generally rank very low. New Zealand has the highest Islamicity index. World at 8, not surprised, all the poor sheep know it as well. World news: Iraq, mother and daughter raped by ISIS militants for not paying jizya tax. Dr Salama al-Khawaji, a member of the Iraq High Commission for Human Rights, told ANIA that ISIS began enforcing the tax against Christians in Mosul. When the family told militants they could not afford the tax, 3 ISIS members reportedly raped the mother and daughter in front of the husband and father, who was so traumatised he committed suicide. The Christians have told me they cannot pay this tax, Dr al-Khawaji said, and they say, what am I to do? Shall I kill myself? World at 8, oh dear. Where is a crusader when you need him? Will the UN go in there? I doubt it, not to save Christians. And to the comment that the BNP should forget Christians, tough, I am one, but still respect pagans, although I have no time for atheists. Get over it. Syria, 12,000 fighters from 81 countries in civil war. Some 12,000 combatants from 81 countries have joined the Syrian civil war since it began 3 years ago, the former head of counter-terrorism at MI6, Richard Barrett, said in a report Tuesday. Of these, 3,000 come from Western countries, beginning with France, more than 700, followed by the UK at least 400, Germany 270 and Belgium 250. The bulk come from the Arab world with 3,000 Tunisians and 1,500 Moroccans. This makes 2,000 more foreign fighters than joined the fray in Afghanistan in a decade of war. Ara al-Sham, Jabhat al-Nusra and ISIS, all of which were founded by former members of al-Qaeda, attract the most foreign combatants. These three groups are more capable of fielding large number of troops, are better organised and better financed than their more moderate counterparts, Barrett wrote. The Syrian war will probably become an incubator for a new generation of terrorists. World at 8, and I hope that every single one of them gets killed by Assad's forces. Australia offers asylum seekers $10,000 to return home. Australia is offering asylum seekers in its Pacific immigration camps up to $10,000 if they voluntarily return to their home country, a report said Saturday, prompting outrage from refugee campaigners. Fairfax Media reported that those returning to Lebanon from detention centres on Papua New Guinea's Manus Island and the tiny Pacific state of Nauru were offered the highest amount, $10,000. Iranians and Sudanese were given $7,000 if they dropped bids for refugee status, Afghans $4,000 and those from Pakistan, Nepal and Myanmar $3,300, the report in the Sydney Morning Herald said. World at 8. OK, but what measures are being taken to make sure they do not come in again for more handouts? A small brand on the wrist would help, as being non-PC, a lot of these people do resemble each other to Europeans. Thought for the day. Some problems are not meant to be solved. I wonder if it has occurred to the many powerful and self-interested governments and gatherings of people who think they're being worldly and liberal that the simple word for so many actions taken by them has been, in a word, interference. Now, I'm not necessarily backing our chairman and his premise that we should stay out of Muslim countries and they should stay out of ours, because it is too simplistic and too complicated and, in a sense, too late for that to happen, because this die had been cast during the last century and reached its culmination in the last two world wars. Since the dawn of time, men have gathered together to protect one another. That is how the human race, even the ones we despise, survived. Well, along with a well-practised clubbing, that is, and a breeding programme that puts us to shame nowadays. Well, as man or certain tribes became more sophisticated, they gave themselves titles, formed practical alliances to do what? To protect and serve the relevant lands they lived in, not to protect foreign lands. The only form of protection that foreign lands, and I mean foreign as in a global sense, was by the form of conquering and either converting or taxing to the limit. And of course slavery was a well-used form of barter and submission for thousands of years. For just as many years the cream has always risen to the top. Whether you accept this or not, it is true, just as how we in Europe review the cream is our own personal right. Now, if the world that exists now had been formed and kept on an ancient pathway of do's and don'ts, we could go back way beyond the European Dark Ages in an effort to find a cure for something which need not be cured. Go back to the times of King Nimrod and you have to realise that the Bible, whether the Old or New Testament, is in itself a testament to violence and cruelty on a massive scale for the world population at those times. Joshua razed entire cities to the ground and killed even the lowest animals that crawled, and all in the name of Yahweh. That is what you did if you were powerful or sought power. You killed on a grand scale that would have shamed even Stalin. And as for invasions of land, Poland is diminished in its entirety on the scale of death that this early act by the Third Reich caused. So let's not have anyone umming and ahhing on those deeds when early kingdoms became great over trillions of bodies over the years. So back to Nimmy, as I call him, my favourite Bible character. And he became a bit bold, as the saying goes, and decided to build a tower to reach heaven and the one God. Well, the big G didn't take too kindly to this and decided that man once again had gotten too big for his britches, so decimated those workers and mankind by the old tried and true method of divide and conquer. So whatever religion you adhere to or don't, blame the big G for the fact that everyone on earth was supposed to stick to their own lands and communicate with peoples of their own language. Doesn't seem too bad to me, of course. So through the ensuing centuries we had the so-called civilised world raping, pillaging and conquering other peoples in other lands, albeit before air travel, so things were a bit limited with regard to armies and supplies. Thence, with the desert tribes and peoples who lived in what is now called the Middle East, the forbidding of eating the meat of pork etc. because of the lack of Frigidaires in those times. But slavery was doing very well, but unfortunately the poor old Romans, apart from killing Jesus Christ from the house of David, paid a very heavy price for their antics in European politics with the Goths and Huns, who did what Goths and Huns do, take over, which they did. I'm avoiding the Far East as I'm only concerned with Europe and around the Mediterranean. Then we had the rise of Muhammad, who didn't take long to realise he had a standing army already there in the form of wanderers of the desert, and he needed money and power like all despots to keep going. And it didn't take long. Very soon Islam had spread throughout Arabia up to parts of Mesopotamia and was winging its way very nicely, thank you, through Europe to the northern climes, to be stopped virtually at the gates of Vienna by luck. But we all know our history, but our European history, ruled by wars and men in that order, as indeed is the rest of the world. A word for the Jewish people, however, is that after Christ's death and the spread of Christianity, many Jews fled to Europe. Well, there wasn't anywhere else to go. The Americas had not been discovered yet. We have in Europe a fair record for the Jewish people living out their lives in relative safety. Not brilliant, but not bad, and indeed put that against any Christian living in a Muslim-controlled country, and we've done much better than most in integrating, but not assimilating Jews. I have said before, they don't invade anymore but have learnt to take the soft approach to survive, and this I admire. But then of course we in Europe had to go through Oliver Cromwell, who buggered up Ireland beyond repair, the Industrial Revolution, colonialism, trouble in France, wars with other European countries, which they still haven't forgotten, culminating in the Marxist Jewish communists in Russia. In effect it was the Marxists that the German people had the problems with way before Hitler got started, but I digress. Since then we've shown great interest in the Middle East, and believe me when I say, had it not been for oil, that interest would have waned with time. There wasn't much there before oil, just buried beautiful ancient Egyptian cities which the French and Germans started to excavate, palm trees, camels and prayer towers, and no bacon sarnies. Then we had the great call of democracy for all that went out from the UN, NATO and the European laughingly called Union. Quite suddenly, whilst in Europe all the countries within there were expected to receive, adulate, pay for and accommodate Muslims and others from every known corner of the world, and quite a few not, the Middle East was supposed to become democratic. Now you ask yourself why. The US and us had spent millions of dollars and pounds in putting in place people like Saddam and Gaddafi and more, who ruled as Islamic dictators ruled, and bear in mind Islam is a dictatorship as well as a religion. And these guys ruled as the old sheiks and warlords ruled in the Middle Ages. In short, how we used to rule in ancient times to survive. Then along with the virulent nanny state that still pervades America and Europe, certain people decided that to change any rule in any country in the world, you have to appear for the people to want change, and that change is of course democracy. Now what idiot decided that Muslim countries wanted democracy? The whole edict of the Quran is anti-democracy and anti-power to the people. So why on earth think that these particular countries would want or need these changes? It's all money based. If the country concerned suffers massive losses of life, we in Europe and the UK are decimated by the flow of so-called refugees, by these training the troops and arms exercises, the oil will still flow and the arms makers will still cash in. In short, what the Chinese do by buying up and installing their own, Islam does by sheer numbers and movement, and the Russians do by sheer willpower, the West does by creating a need for safety and progress in the form of democracy in all its hypocritical aspects of do-gooding for the people. Now clearly this has not had the desired effect. Hindsight is a wonderful thing. It allows for the perpetrators of such deeds to just turn a blind eye or form yet another committee to find out how things happened or why they happened, whilst busily trying to shuffle away from the whole problem. The Arab Spring, which was hailed as a rite of passage for many of our young men and women who are now dead, has given birth to a winter of discontent. It's been like watching a disaster movie ably reported or rather exhorted by our media. And the worst thing is, all of the countries who have been subjected to the democracy bug clearly do not want it. One hopes that all these bodies of humans who seem not to have a brain between them but plenty of income realise that bringing democracy to a people or peoples who have never operated under that system has been a total disaster. You couldn't have done it better, as the old song goes, not. Islam has not a democratic thought and cannot replace centuries of total rule by total rulers with all that encompasses, and even before Islam, these are the Persians and Medes who devastated vast swathes of Central Europe and parts of Asia Minor, all of which was done by the sword. The whole system of the Middle East is not driven by democracy but by fire and jihad in one form or another. Take this away and these people will either bring it to our shores or decimate all the so-called work interference has done. Now, I'm still anti-Islam in Europe and always will be. Islam is as foreign to us as democracy is to them. I'm not excusing 9/11 or the other horrible acts followers of Islam have brought about, and in fact 9/11 occurred when the Western call of democracy for all had barely been heard, and if I'd been in power at that time in the US, at least a couple of Muslim countries would have been somewhat diminished, and I make no apologies for that. But in truth, if we stay out of Syria and Iraq now, what excuse would Islam and the Jihadists have to do what they do? If we removed all traces of Europeans within those lands, even to shutting down embassies and trade routes, what reason would they then give for what they will, without doubt, still do? If we sent all our Muslims back to the lands that they seem hell-bent on reproducing within Europe, would that mean another holy war because we had expelled them? You see, it is the man who has the largest sword and the least conscience that rules the world. And who is it? Us or them? And finally, 2 for 1 Day Wednesday, you lucky people. Now, to offend the Irish Catholics, for whom I personally have the greatest respect. Murphy drops some buttered toast on the kitchen floor and it lands butter side up. He looks down in astonishment, for he knows that it's the law of nature of the universe that buttered toast always falls butter down. So he rushes round to the presbytery to fetch Father Flanagan. He tells the priest that a miracle has occurred in his kitchen. But he won't say what it is, so he asks Father Flanagan to come and see it with his own eyes. He leads Father Flanagan into the kitchen and asks him what he sees on the floor. Well, says the priest, it's pretty obvious. Someone has dropped some buttered toast on the floor and then, for some reason, they flipped it over, so the butter was on the top. No, Father, I dropped it and it landed like that, exclaimed Murphy. Oh my Lord, said Father Flanagan, dropped toast never falls with the butter side up. It's a Wait, it's not for me to say it's a miracle. I'll have to report this matter to the bishop and he'll have to deal with it. He'll send some people round to interview you, take photos, etc. A thorough investigation is conducted, not only by the Archdiocese but by scientists sent over from the Curia in Rome. No expense is spared. There's great excitement in the town, as everyone knows that a miracle will bring much needed tourism revenue. Then after 8 long weeks and with great fanfare, the bishop announces the final ruling. It is certain that some kind of an extraordinary event took place in Murphy's kitchen, quite outside the natural laws of the universe. Yet the Holy See must be very cautious before ruling a miracle. All other explanations must be ruled out. Unfortunately, in this case it has been declared no miracle because they think that Murphy may have buttered the toast on the wrong side. And not to be outdone from the US of A, a new slant on an old saying. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger, except bears. Bears will kill you. You've been listening to The World at 8. I am Lynne Mozart and I wish you all a very good night.